amazing. I mean, I played her when she kind of broke out last year in Miami, and I'm from there, and the whole crowd was against me, and I was like, what on earth is going on? Like, where do these people come from? And then week after week, as she has done well and established herself as a really good player on tour, they all come out to support her. And so I think we saw that in Australia when it was kind of overcrowded. They put her on too small of a court. We saw it here. You can hear it from the hotel. You can hear the crowd roaring, especially at night. So it's incredible.
Fresh off winning the Dubai Tennis Championships, Jessica Pegula walked into the post-match press conference expecting the usual questions about her performance. But the conversation quickly shifted. One of the reporters asked her about Eala. What followed wasn't the typical diplomatic answer athletes often give when they're trying to stay polite or neutral. It was something more genuine. Pegula spoke openly about Eala and the incredible support she receives from Filipino fans. Her words sounded less like a routine response and more like real admiration for the passion and energy that the Filipino fan base brings to the sport. And when Filipino fans heard what she said, the reaction was immediate. Social media lit up with excitement, pride, and celebration. Moments like this show just how powerful the Filipino tennis community has become in recent years, loud, loyal, and deeply supportive of their rising star. The question is bigger than just one comment in a press conference. After hearing what Jessica Pegula had to say about Eala and her fans, do you think the rest of the Women's Tennis Association Tour is finally starting to recognize the impact of the Filipino fan base on women's tennis?
It was Eala is the match that I was looking at, and there was people like wrapped around the stadium just trying to get in, which is pretty crazy. And I mean, it's cool to see and it's exciting, but obviously, for fan experience, I don't know because I'm not living that same experience. But hopefully, the event kind of continues to grow with the fans that we're getting and making that still an enjoyable experience for them. But I did see some of the courts have like lines getting in and it seems really busy, and I saw some reports that it's some of their busiest they've ever been and it's packed and all that, which is I think great. I mean, obviously it shows that the event is growing, the sport is growing, and that's amazing, I think.
Let's start by understanding who Jessica Pegula is in this conversation, because that context matters. Pegula isn't someone watching Eala from afar and forming opinions based on highlights or social media clips. She has actually played against her. Their meeting came at the Miami Open in 2025, where Pegula was the player who ended Eala's incredible run in the semifinals of the WTA 1000 event. And that run was the moment the tennis world truly noticed Eala. During that tournament, she defeated Yelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and Iga Swiatek in succession. Beating three elite players back-to-back like that made it impossible for anyone to dismiss what she was doing. So when Pegula talks about Eala, she's not speaking in generalities. She's talking about someone she has faced across the net at a pivotal moment. She knows what it feels like to compete against her. She knows what the atmosphere is like when Eala is playing. And she understands something that viewers from home might not fully grasp: the impact of Eala's fans. Right after winning the Dubai Tennis Championships final against Anna Kalinskaya, Pegula was asked about Eala during the press conference. Her response was strikingly direct. She didn't say Eala has potential, or that she's playing well recently. Pegula simply said, "Alex is amazing." That was her opening line. Not a polite compliment, a strong statement. She went on to talk about how Eala fills stadiums and how passionately the Philippines supports her, describing the energy around her as something special. Then Pegula shifted to something deeper. She praised the way Eala handles the attention that comes with representing an entire nation, the media scrutiny, the expectations, the pressure from fans who follow every match. According to Pegula, Eala carries all of that with remarkable maturity and grace. Then the conversation turned personal. Pegula remembered their match at the Miami Open, the tournament where Eala first broke out on the global stage. And she said something you almost never hear from a player discussing a match they won. She talked about the crowd. Pegula recalled standing on the court and thinking, "What on earth is going on? Where did all these people come from?" Think about that moment. Jessica Pegula, an American player, daughter of the Buffalo Bills owner, playing in Miami, an American city. Yet during that match, she felt like the visiting player. Why? Because the Filipino fans had completely taken over the stadium. Miami has one of the largest Filipino communities on the east coast of the United States, and they showed up in full force to support Eala. Pegula still remembers that atmosphere more than a year later. That detail deserves more attention than it has received. Back in 2025, Eala wasn't yet a global name in tennis. She entered the Miami Open ranked outside the top 100, and yet the crowd she generated was so powerful that the player who defeated her described the experience as playing against a home crowd in her own country. That simply doesn't happen often in professional tennis. Pegula said she witnessed that energy again in Dubai. According to her, you could actually hear the fans cheering from the hotel, not just from the stadium. Not from the court area. From the hotel itself. The sound of Filipino fans cheering for Alex Eala was so loud that it carried far beyond the stadium. According to Jessica Pegula, the chants and cheers could actually be heard from the hotel rooms where players were staying. Just picture that for a moment. A professional tennis player lying in a hotel bed at night, hearing a crowd chanting the name of her next opponent somewhere in the distance. That image perfectly captures what many players are now calling the Eala effect. It's not just something you see on the court, it's something you hear and feel throughout the entire venue. Pegula didn't stop there. She connected that experience to what Eala's rise means for the sport itself. She said she thinks what Eala is doing for tennis is awesome. She described her as a perfect role model, especially for young athletes who are watching her journey unfold. Pegula specifically mentioned Filipino girls, saying she believes Eala's success will inspire them to start playing tennis and chase their own dreams, and she finished by saying something notable. She called it awesome for the sport, and then said it again, twice. Almost as if saying it once wasn't enough to express how strongly she felt about it. But there's another comment Pegula made that deserves a closer look. During the press conference, she remembered standing on the court during their match and thinking, where did all these people come from? At first glance, that might sound like a casual remark. But it's actually one of the most revealing things said about Eala's rise in recent memory. Pegula wasn't being dismissive at all. The context made it clear that she was genuinely surprised and maybe even a little amazed. But the comment unintentionally exposed something the tennis world has been slow to fully understand. The Filipino fanbase was always there. It didn't suddenly appear out of nowhere. It already existed in cities around the world where large Filipino communities live. Cities like Miami, Los Angeles, New York City, Melbourne, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi. Millions of Filipinos already live in these places. The community was always capable of showing up in massive numbers. What they didn't have before was a tennis star to rally around. Then Alex Eala arrived. And suddenly the fan base had a reason to mobilize. That's an important distinction. What we're seeing around Eala is not a fan base manufactured through marketing campaigns, sponsorship promotions, or social media advertising. It's something far more powerful. It's an organic community that has been waiting for someone to represent them on one of the biggest stages in global sport. Once Eala started defeating top players and making deep runs in major tournaments, that community responded immediately. And the response has been massive. Within roughly 12 months, Filipino fans have filled stadium sections and overwhelmed venues across 3 continents. One of the clearest examples came at the Australian Open in Melbourne. The courts assigned to Eala's matches quickly became crowd management challenges. The polite description was standing room only. But the reality was that thousands of fans were trying to watch matches scheduled on courts that were never designed for that level of demand. And that's saying something, because the Australian Open already hosts some of the largest tennis crowds in the world. The tournament regularly features multiple top players competing at the same time and has broken its own attendance records in recent years. Yet even that massive event wasn't fully prepared for what happened when Alex Eala stepped onto those courts. Because when she plays, something different happens. The crowd doesn't just watch. At the Dubai Tennis Championships, the impact of Alex Eala was impossible to ignore. According to tournament director Sala Tolak, every single one of her matches sold out. That alone would be impressive, but what made it remarkable was his reaction. Tolak admitted he had never seen anything like it during his entire time running the event. Think about that. His is a tournament that has hosted world number 1 players, Grand Slam champions, and some of the biggest names in tennis for years. Yet somehow, a player ranked outside the top 30 created something unprecedented. The same pattern has been repeating itself everywhere she plays. Indian Wells Open. Crowds were already pressing against the fences around the practice courts before her matches even began. Fans were gathering in such large numbers that it actually raised safety concerns. something a former ATP Tour professional even mentioned during a broadcast. And remember, Indian Wells is the largest tennis tournament in the United States. IT set an all-time attendance record in 2025, even in a year when Eala wasn't part of the draw. Now, with her making her first appearance there, organizers suddenly have to manage unexpected crowd situations around a player who technically hasn't even established herself as a tournament regular yet. Through all of this attention, though, Eala's response has remained remarkably consistent. Jessica Pegula noticed that immediately. She said Eala handles the spotlight with maturity and grace, always seeming genuinely appreciative of the support while keeping a clear head about the moment. That observation is important, because the pressure surrounding Eala right now is enormous. She's only 20 years old, yet she carries the expectations of an entire nation every time she walks onto the court. There's the constant media attention, the endless interviews, the emotional weight of representing the Philippines on one of the biggest stages in global sport. For many young players, that kind of spotlight can become overwhelming. IT has broken promising careers before. But Eala's public presence, whether in press conferences, post-match interviews, or on social media, shows someone who is grateful for the support without being consumed by it. After her run in Dubai, she even went on social media simply to thank her fans directly. She wrote about how much their time, energy, and effort meant to her, how the fans who traveled, cheered, and supported her made the entire experience unforgettable. That kind of authentic appreciation strengthens the emotional bond between a player and her supporters. And when that connection grows, it creates a powerful cycle. The fans show up louder and stronger, and the player responds with even more gratitude. Relationship that keeps reinforcing itself. Eala's impact hasn't gone unnoticed by her peers either. Coco Gauff praised the Filipino fans after facing Eala in Dubai. Amanda Anisimova also shared her thoughts about the energy surrounding Eala's matches. And now Jessica Pegula, player who actually stood across the net from Eala during her breakout moment at the Miami Open, has delivered what might be the most personal and enthusiastic praise yet from an active WTA player. When three American players independently talk about the same opponent and the same fan base within just a few weeks, it stops looking like coincidence. IT starts to look like a pattern. Players notice things. They notice when crowds suddenly become louder. They notice when practice courts start attracting massive audiences. They notice when a colleague steps onto a court and the atmosphere instantly changes. And they definitely notice when the sound of cheering travels far enough that it can be heard from the hotel rooms where players are staying. That's not normal in professional tennis. And it's one more sign that something unusual is happening around Eala. There's also another dimension to this story, the business side of tennis. Because when a player begins generating this kind of global attention, brands start paying very close attention. Reports are already emerging that Eala has become the target of major sponsorship interest, with several large companies rumored to be preparing significant endorsement offers. And from a marketing perspective, it makes perfect sense. Eala represents more than just a talented young athlete. She represents access to a massive, passionate global community that is showing up in stadiums, online platforms, and television audiences around the world. In other words, what's happening around Eala right now isn't just a sports story anymore. This is the moment when the market finally catches up to what the crowds have been saying for over a year. The message from the stands has been clear for a long time. There is a player with a global, mobilized, financially active fan base who is also winning matches and climbing the rankings. That player is Eala. For brands looking to connect with the Filipino market, or with young sports fans across Southeast Asia and the Filipino diaspora in major cities around the world, that combination is incredibly attractive. Because Eala doesn't just bring talent to the court. She brings an entire community with her. And that changes the economics of the sport. But the most important part of this story is that it's not just about one great season. Eala is only 20 years old. She reached a career-high ranking of number 28 in the world before even stepping onto the courts at Indian Wells Open, where she now has the chance to go deeper in a draw she's entering as a seeded player for the first time. Immediately after Indian Wells comes the Miami Open. And Miami is where this entire story truly began. That was the tournament where Jessica Pegula stood on the court during their semi-final match and found herself wondering where all those fans had come from. If Eala makes deep runs at both Indian Wells and Miami this year, the ranking points she collects could push her into an entirely new level of the sport. And that changes everything. It changes how she's seeded at Grand Slam tournaments. It changes which opponents she faces in the early rounds. And it increases the chances that she'll reach the biggest stages in tennis, playing deep into tournaments against the very best players in the world, whose structural advantages start to compound over time. For a player whose game is already improving quickly, that kind of momentum can accelerate a career dramatically. The results are starting to match the energy of the crowds, and the tennis world is beginning to notice that Pegula's praise is simply the latest in a growing series of acknowledgements from top players that something unusual is happening around Eala. But Pegula's words carry a special weight, because she's not just another observer. She was there. She was the player standing on the other side of the net during Eala's breakout moment in Miami. She experienced the atmosphere firsthand, the sea of Filipino fans, the overwhelming support, the feeling of suddenly becoming the visiting player in a tournament in her own country. That's when she said she looked around and thought, what on earth is going on? But the tone of that comment wasn't confusion, it was recognition. Pegula was recognizing something the Filipino tennis community had been building toward for years. Something Eala herself had been building toward for years, and something the global tennis world is only now beginning to fully understand. The answer to Pegula's question, where did all these people come from, is actually very simple. They were always there. Eala just gave them a reason to be visible. And that's the story behind what Jessica Pegula said about Eala and the Filipino fans, and why it might signal an even bigger future for this rising star. If this story got you excited, hit the like button and tell us in the comments which moment in Eala's career has impressed you the most. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do.